Good morning, everybody. It is Wednesday, the 8th. Yes, no, 9th. Yes, it was the 8th. Oy. This is what happens to me after 3 days of no work, is I forget what day it is. Otherwise, everything's been going very nicely. If you all had watched my videos, you'll see that yesterday I went out for some groceries. There, Walmart is still out of yeast for baking, um, bread making, whatever you need yeast for. Um, they were out of chicken thighs, which we use boneless chicken thighs for a couple different recipes. So, yeah, it's not like anybody's getting desperate, but you start to wonder when you go into your store on a regular basis and your store still has not gotten certain products in or have run out of other products like chicken thighs. Last week they had chicken thighs. This week they don't. They still don't have any yeast. Um, Trying to think what else did I try to buy yesterday that they were out of. I think those were the two main things: was yeast and chicken breast or chicken thighs, chicken meat, whatever. My Walmart's chicken section was like wiped out except for a package of bone-in chicken breast and a couple packages of chicken legs, drumsticks, whatever you want to call them. Um, but otherwise, for the most part, Rala has been fairly decent. People are being respectful. Some people are still not heeding CDC's request that you wear a mask or some kind of face guard, so you're not breathing on people. That in a factor, if you listen to the CDC and the doctors and scientists talk, the mask is not just so you don't spread the virus if you have the virus, but it's so you don't breathe it in, because even though it's a water-based molecule, it's in a water molecule type germ, basically. So even if you don't have it, there is a chance that you could breathe it in. I have, I have 3M masks that were designed for like sanding, woodworking, dust. It's basically a mask to block the dust and pollen from getting into your airway. Um, it's about the best thing I have right now. Some people have suggested, sorry, some people have suggested just making one yourself. It doesn't have to have the active charcoal filter system. That charcoal filter system is good for certain things, but for the most part, as long as you have a basically something to cover your mouth and nose to block the airway. Um, Amazon has them available. Amazon has masks available that have the charcoal. Um, some people are yeah, some people are saying that either the N95 or the NK95 with a filtration system is good. You don't have to have the charcoal aspect to your mask. In fact, most standard respirators, um, like the painting respirators or woodworking the woodworking respirators, or just regular plain respirators, they don't have charcoal in their filter systems. The charcoal the charcoal insert or pad or whatever you want to call it, it's good for certain things. It's good for allergens and pollutants and things like that. But I don't see the necessity for the active charcoal aspect, because think about it. You're breathing in basically charcoal dust unless you wash and rinse and properly take care of the charcoal filtration system. But if you don't, or if you've got a bad one, which you won't know about, you're breathing in charcoal dust. Charcoal dust is one of the biggest killers of miners during the boom in places like Kentucky and Tennessee, where they were coal miners. And coal mining was a dangerous thing, and back then they didn't have the masks and whatnot to protect them from the charcoal dust that was in the air. So do your research. Now, today's charcoal filtration masks might be different because the filters are a little bit thicker or something like that. But to me, the thicker the filter, the harder it is to breathe. Especially with somebody like me who has breathing problems as is. So so when I go to wear a mask, I want a mask that's not gonna hamper my breathing or cause me even more issues because I'm trying to breathe and I can't get enough air or oxygen to satisfy my lungs. Other than that, things have been going good today. Today the plans are to get into Jerry-Ann's crafting room and finish up some of the things that we didn't get to in our last cleaning of that room, which is mostly stuff that we moved from the sidelines to, excuse me, to in front of the crafting table, which basically is between the crafting table and the closet where Jerry-Ann has a lot of stuff stored in there. So we got to go in there and clean up that area. There's a bunch of paperwork and whatnot that I have to file, so I have to work on that. And then, depending on how quickly we get that done or when we get that started, depends on what other project we're going to try to do today. Now I have 6 days to finish up the projects. I was hoping we'd get started on the bigger woodworking projects first and foremost, because one of the woodworking projects is we're going to make a stove topper. And basically what a stove topper is, it's a wooden flat surface that we sit on top of the stove, so when we're not using the stove, and because it's a glass stove, it protects the stove somewhat. Well, I don't see that as a necessity because we do use the stove a lot. And my only in my brain, my only problem is, okay, when we go to use a stove, where are we putting this stovetop the thing? Um, it's either move it to the side, move it on top of the sink, put it on top of the sink. Our countertops they're decent. They're not small. They're not huge. But because we have a lot of various devices and whatnot on there, it's kind of hard to put anything on the counter. The other wooden thing we're going to do is a topper for a cabinet. The cabinet is not very big. It's a little cupboard that we put on the ground. It's not as big as your standard cabinet. It's about half that size. And we were thinking we can move the Q-rig on top of it, but there's not enough space on top of the cabinet for the Q-rig, so we're going to build a topper to basically put on top of the cabinet to give it more surface space. Because we're hoping if we move the Q-rig on top of that with all the other coffee bar accoutrement, it gives us more space on the actual counter. Um, what I originally came on here for, before my brain just lost it. Um, I did my morning Bible study, and the title of this in the devotional is "Who Are You?" Now, a lot of us can answer that question easily, but when you think of the simplicity of who you really are, that's where things get complicated. Because I can sit here and go, okay, who am I? I'm James Henson. I'm born Philippine Islands, Clark Air Base in '71. I consider myself fairly simple. I like collecting various things. Some of them are usable, some of them are just decoration. I'm a simple person. I don't really I don't like complications. That's a simple version of who I am. In this book, or in the read I did, he compares Jesus to, well, put it this way. A lot of us can get presumptuous and arrogant to our who am I? How important am I? Okay. Well, yeah, we are all important to a certain extent, but there are those who literally use this statement, do you know who I am, in a very arrogant and cocky manner. I'm going to use two different people as an example to what, sorry, I'm sliding, what was said in the book. There are those out there, including my supervisor and Donald Trump, who have the arrogance of claiming dominance. Now, I can't really go into detail with Trump because I try to avoid politics as best as I can. Because, as I'm concerned, you can take every politician on the face of this nation, stick them on a deserted island with one boat, big enough for one person, saying, whoever comes out on top can take the boat home. Yeah. But because of the person I work for, or I should say with, she has the audacity, hubris, and arrogance to claim that she is our, not just our store boss, but our boss, as in she pays us to do the work we're supposed to be doing. No, I'm sorry. That's a little overbearing. Because one thing I've learned thanks to New York is everybody in the store, everybody who's connected to the corporation is expendable. We are all expendable in our jobs. If the boss, store manager, basically, decides that they found somebody who can do the job better than you, they can get rid of you. Now, I know in New York they have to have a legitimate reason to get rid of you because of unions. Everybody out there is connected to a union in one way or another, unless you're a privately owned corporation or company. And even then, the union tries to get their hooks into you. I've worked with unions. The unions in New York were very good people because of the fact that they took care of you. The one union I worked with when I first got here in Missouri was useless. They were just in it for the money, not for the people. I know some of you might argue with that, but I'm going to give you an example, and this video is going to be a little long. In New York, when I started working with the grocery stores and in the deli, the union basically, it was kind of like not really mandatory, but it was highly suggested, and I took it because everybody out there was like, yeah, 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 you need to be part of the union because if something happens, the union will help you out. I was part of the union, and they did help me out the one time the one time something happened. I can't remember exactly what it was, but oh, it was I didn't really have an accident where I hurt myself to the point where I still get all my fingers. Um, but I had hurt myself, and when it happened, at first I was like, it's nothing. It's nothing. I'm not bleeding. I'm not damaged. I'm not bruised. I'm not going to be getting rushed to the hospital or anything like that. And they're like, well, just to cover yourself, fill out the paperwork. Make sure you fill out the paperwork and put as much detail in as possible. So I was like, all right, no problem. And I did. And within 48 hours, the union came to me and said, Jim, we got the paperwork, we got all your information and whatnot for this accident. Is there anything you need us to do? And I just went, at the point in time, I was like, no, I'm not really. I didn't go to the doctor. I didn't go to the hospital. I didn't. There was nothing wrong. There was no bruising. There was no evidence of damage. It hurt. And they're like, all right, well, if you need us, call this number. And I was like, okay, fine. About a week or so after that, and it had nothing to do with that particular incident. I had a question basically, and I called the number, and they answered all my questions, and they were like, the next day I had a union rep coming to me going, okay, we got your phone call, we got your information, this is what we're going to do for you. And they basically helped cover my bases and make sure that if for some reason something happened, um, that I would be covered for it. Now, when I first, learned about the unions and whatnot, I had a lot of like bad negative information from my father because he was part of a union when he got out of the military working in Arizona. And he didn't like the union. He just thought the union was like scraping them over the coals for money and whatnot. Now, there are unions of various types for various jobs. There's woodworkers unions. There's pipeline unions. There's electrical unions. There's unions in New York. There are unions for just about every major job, and I don't mean just like the high end, high risk jobs where you're up, several hundred feet up in the air trying to put a building together. I'm talking about them all the way down to the grocery store workers and the deli workers and the meat packers, and they out there in New York, because factor New York is such a large place and a lot of people, and they're also one of the ones getting hit the worst with this coronavirus. Um, there are unions for just about everything, and they're good. Now, when I got here to Missouri, and I was supposed to be the deli manager at Kroger, but that kind of fell through because of circumstances outside of my control. Um, when the union came to me that in there at that store, I was like, yeah, I remember the union out in New York. This should be okay. No, they're the ones who helped basically get rid of me. Um, Now I can go into that story on a different video upon request, because I'm not going to get into detail with a lot of my videos on the past. Um, but like I said, here in the Midwest, the Missouris aren't as good as they were in New York. Um, I now understand what my father was saying about the union basically just wanting their money, wanting their pound of flesh, and not really caring about the worker. But in my study, and I got off subject, I'm sorry. In my study today, it was basically not the factor of there are a lot of people out there who have positions or have this attitude where everybody should know who they are just because of their name or whatnot. Jesus knew who he was, and he did not have the arrogance or audacity of running around going, "Do you know who I am? Do you know who I am?" No. He was given the authority and power and persona, so to speak, where everywhere he went, people already knew who he was. Not just because of word of mouth from the next village over or whatnot, but just because of who he was. And we know who he was and we know who he is because of his sacrifice. Jesus did not have to go around announcing himself or getting into people's faces, basically demanding people to know who he was. Unfortunately, there are many people, including our own president, who has the arrogance to demand respect. See, there's the difference. Humankind, people in general, leaders of one form or another, from your lowly store manager to your president of the United States, who demand to be known, demand to be respected. Jesus, on the other hand, commanded. Now, the difference you might want to know is a simple factor that Jesus did not have to basically boast or stand up in front of a crowd and yell at the top of their lungs to be heard or to be respected, or however you want to put it. Jesus didn't need to do that. Jesus walked his walk. He talked his talk. He did everything that was put in front of him to do. He followed his Father's rules, his commands. Didn't have to speak loudly. Didn't have to stand up in front of a crowd. In fact, what I understand from the Bible is Jesus preferred small groups, not extravagant crowds or parties or anything like that. In fact, the only party he ever went to, according to the Bible, was a wedding, and that was it. There was no real big parties that he stayed at or went to. You can command respect and have everybody ignore you. Alright, I'll take that back. You can demand respect and have everybody ignore you. But when you command respect, and that's not like you have to respect me because of my authority or my position, but to command respect, to basically get respect without being overly exertive or assertive or demanding. My father was a big guy. He was not very authoritative. Well, he was the type of guy that when he walked into a room, everybody's attention went to him, just automatically. Didn't have to say a single word. He'd come into a room, somebody go, "Hey, Jim's here," and there goes the attention right to my dad. My dad was not one of these people who was demanding. He had this whole "you respect me, I respect you" attitude. Not that he demanded your respect. It was one of those, you give it, I'll give it back. That to me is not really. I don't want to compare my father to God because I don't. But if you were to, in my brain, if you were to try to compare the two, the only difference is my father didn't do miracles, didn't walk on water, couldn't create fish and bread out of thin air or change water into wine or anything like that. But when it came to the authority type figure, yeah, you can probably compare the two. Granted, my father would say no, but what was that old comment that somebody said? When Jesus talks, even E.F. Hutton listens. That's kind of like my father. When he started to speak, people listened. Um, he didn't give grand speeches or anything like that, but yeah. Um, but like I hate to pull this person out of the past, but Mike, I'm not going to give last names, but Mike was my mother's boyfriend after my father passed away. Um, he was more the demanding type. He was the more the you have to respect me or else type. Um, Basically, he was totally opposite of my father. Nobody cared when he walked in the room. Mike. Nobody cared when Mike walked into the room. Um, he demanded that we listen to him. I didn't. Of course, you gotta realize that was my 17, my late teens. And I was already being a rebellious person anyhow because my dad was dead. There was nobody in the family that could discipline me like he did. There was nobody who could basically say my name and cause me to have fear. Um, Not that I feared my father, I respected my father. We didn't always get along in my early to mid teens because I was having school issues and whatnot. But let's just put it this way: as they were lowering his casket into the grave, I stood there watching it, and quietly, so nobody would really hear me, I basically said I would no I would no longer fear another person in my entire life. Now I gave respect to my father-in-law because he was a very good man. But when it came to me and Mike, oh no, 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 no. Let's just put it this way. If I hadn't been a skinny person or physically weak, um, the scraps that we could have gotten into would have been pretty epic. It was one thing when he was trying to use his book smarts compared to my street smarts um, in certain situations. Like, let's just say this much. After mom and him separated, even though they kept in contact, me and mom moved here to Missouri. And there was one year where we had, basically, mom came to me and asked me about it. And I said, sure, why not? You know, mom had basically wanted to know if he can come to Missouri with his two kids just to check it out. Not to stay with us or anything like that. And I said, sure, why not? Well, before he had come, the first year he had come down without the kids. And I just went, yeah, he's only visiting for a little while. No big deal. Of course, I did say, Mom, I don't care what you do. If you want to bring him here to visit, that's fine and dandy. But he's not gonna stay. He's not gonna live in this house with us. If he does, it's not by his rules. It's gonna be by my rules, because I'm not letting him take over. Not like he did in Arizona. I was older. I was smarter. I wasn't gonna let him do what he did when I was a teen. So the first time he came down, Mom and I decided to go take him to a place called Jesse James Hideout, which is a little out in the middle of the woods, nowhere restaurant slash bar. Anyhow, I don't know what was going on. I don't know if it was his attitude or whatnot that caused the. It wasn't really an all-out physical fight. It was more of a brains over bronze type ordeal. And I don't know if he said some sort of smart-ass comment when he passed through the bar going to the bathroom the one time or what. But as we were leaving, the bartender and a couple of his buddies were like talking, and as we were passing by, I guess one of them caught sight of Mike's belt. It had a Swiss Army knife hanging off of it in a brown leather carrying case. And somebody goes, "Oh, look out, who's got a knife?" And somebody goes, "That's right, I got a gun." And right before Mike could open his mouth, I just turned around and said, "Sir, do you realize that this is a small, puny little pocket knife? I am pretty sure that most of you have got yourselves a couple buck knives or something a little bit bigger than a simple Swiss Army knife. There would be no contest of who would win. Obviously, you've got the bigger blade." And they all just looked at each other dumbfounded. And of course, I got Mike out. I literally pushed Mike out of the place. And of course, Mike was like, I could have handled myself in there. And I looked at him and said, "Mike, you're dealing with my people. You're dealing with a bunch of rednecks. First thing that's going to happen is you're going to open your mouth with your book smarts, and you're going to offend one of them in a heartbeat, because of the fact that they don't have the book smarts, they got the street smarts like I do. I do not feel like being here to deal with the police report or anything like that, because you had to be yourself and open your mouth." So that right there was one of the many things that Mike did not like. Mike did not like somebody he felt was inferior to him with his book smarts to prove him wrong. I didn't care. Because one of the things I said to Mike before we went out, I said, "You're in my part of the world. You're in my world. These are my people. We might not be the smartest person around because we don't read that much, but when it comes to common sense and dignity, yeah, no contest." So anyhow, this has gotten a little bit longer than I wanted. I don't even know what time it is. I have to go wake up Jerry Ann so we can get our day started. The first thing we're planning on doing today is making a whole loaf of French toast. She had me go out and get some sourdough bread last night so we can make French toast and stock up the freezer with French toast. Here I am playing with something that I got yesterday, and I want to show it, but I don't want to show it because of the fact I want to get more than just one item per video. But before I close this video, just a quick little wish haul. Those of you who've been watching my videos know that I'm a little bit of a gamer. I play video games. well, my MMO, which is basically a mass multimedia player, mass MMO, mass media role playing game. I couldn't. Basically, it's an MMROG, but MMO, mass media online, is WoW, World of Warcraft, and well, I am a collector of things that are basically connected to either WoW or Assassin's Creed. Those are the games I play the most. But I'm also an avid reader, so I have a bunch of books from my reads and whatnot. But I got these yesterday. This is the Warblade or Glaive from World of Warcraft, and they're actually keychains, but I would not want to wear this on my keys because you can still hurt yourself. But this is the Sword of Arthas or the Lich King. So I got those yesterday. I was very happy. Like I said, I'm a geek. I won't deny the fact that I'm a geek. Um, I'm a little bit of everything. I'm a geek. I'm a what one person once called me a rogue scholar because of the fact that I will take all my information and I will basically combine everything to understand the world around me. Like for instance, I read just about every religious text on the face of the planet. There was a time after my dad died for like 20, about 20 years or so, that I was reading everything, every religious text I can get a hold of, trying to study stuff that you couldn't get a hold of regular text on because there's no real written, no modern written text on it. So I've studied everything from Wicca, shamanism, Odism. Odism is basically the Nordic or Viking religion. Um, Druidism, the old Druids, shamanism, Native Americans. Druidism was basically the forerunning religion of Britannia, the British Empire before it was broken up. Wicca, that was old school from Europe. Then I started getting into like the Buddhism, Mohammedanism, um, all the different all the different pre religions before Christianity. I even got a hold of some information to study on Shinto, which was the old Japanese religion or belief system. Then I got into like I read the books on the Mormons. I read baptism, the Baptist books, and the Catholic books, and I basically any religion I can get my hand on. Um, there are some religions out there that you can't find a book on. You only hear bits and pieces about the religions that were passed down word of mouth because they don't write it down. And then I got into like, I was reading books, just about any kind of book that piqued my curiosity, as well as my fantasy books like ElfQuest and Dungeons and Dragonlance and Forgotten Realms, which are based on Dungeons and Dragons. So, yeah. Of course, I took the different religions and I was piecing. Some people think you can't do it. You can. You can piece information together. One of the things that I had a hard time doing because of the fact that it is, and I'm pretty sure if I look nowadays I can find the translated version, but one thing that most Christians don't realize, and this spans back to to the Roman Empire, basically. I can't remember which leader it was of the Roman Empire, but there is a very, very, very large chunk of information missing from our Bibles, from the original texts. They discovered a lot of this information when they found the Dead Sea Scrolls. They are still trying to translate the Dead Sea Scrolls because it was written in 3 different languages. 2 of those languages are dead languages. One is the original Aramaic. The other one is not exactly a dead language, but it's hard to translate. Then the third language, which is easily translated as Greek. The third language that is translatable is basically very close to the modern day Jewish language. And for some reason, that word or that name slipped in my brain. But they are translating the Dead Sea Scrolls, and they're finding out that there's information on the Dead Sea Scrolls and other texts that they've found that was supposed to be part of the original Bible, but the Roman emperor who started the Catholic movement, when they started translating the original text to their language, the Roman language, which is that Greek or Latin? I think that's Latin. But they removed a bunch of information because they felt that it was not important for the average Joe to read. So there was a lot of information that was lost. Some of that information, what I've learned or gathered, is based on stuff that even today we have problems understanding, like UFOs. And the only clue, the only hint towards UFOs is the whole story about a ring within a ring. I think that's Old Testament. I can't remember who saw it or who wrote it. The other thing, which is hinted at, but it's not given in details or it's not said exactly, happened during Jesus' time because he was the one who was performing the miracle of healing. Laying hands. It's an old term meaning basically you have the power to heal within your hands, and you lay your hands on a sick person, and that sick person is healed by your touch, or by the healer's touch. So there's also talk, and this is believed that even in Inca and Mayan cultures, it's talked about telepathy, telekinetics. It seems, according to a lot of the information I've gathered from old world information, is that at one point in time and it's even talked about in the Native American culture, I thought, that we once had the ability to communicate person to person via our minds, not our lips. Scientists have already proven that scientists have proven that we only use 10% of our brain when we have the capacity or the ability because of the way our mind is made. Now, our mind is made up of multiple lobes and parts, basically. And right now, according to scientists, we only use about 10%. But there was a study done back in the 70s where they were testing people for what they called PK abilities, psychic abilities. And they found that those who showed some form or some ability to use psychic ability, that they were using anywhere from 15 to 20% of their brain, which is 5 to 10% more than the average human being. So it is believed by scientists that at one point in time we must have had the ability to use psychic abilities because of the fact that our brain is divided. Our brain is like, you have the processor, the command center, and the memory. Now, the processor is basically like a computer. It processes the information around it. The command center is it's what causes the body to function. Now, they're saying that the command center has the ability to do more than what it does. And of course, the memory system, the memory sector of the brain as well, are memories. Um, so the question is, did we ever have or did we ever use telekinetic abilities? And if so, it could explain a lot of the buildings that are scientifically impossible for the age that they were first built to be built. The pyramids in Peru, the pyramids in various parts of South America, put it that way. The pyramids of Giza, the pyramids they found in China, Mongolia. They've actually discovered a rock formation that at first looked like just a weird shaped mountain, but at using modern technology to study it, it's more of a pyramid shape. And I can't remember if they said that was in. It's somewhere in Europe. I can't remember where it was. But it would explain a lot of the buildings. Now, it won't explain the lines of an Aztec in Peru, or the weird shape snake. There's here in America, I can't remember where it is. There's a weird shape in the ground that, if you look at it from an aerial view, it looks like a serpent swallowing an egg. Anyhow, I've gone on and on and on as usual. That's why I want to do a live, because I can talk forever. Anyhow, yeah, 47 minutes. Yikes. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. Any questions or comments, go ahead and put them in the comment box. Again, I'm going to continue to ask for more positive questions or comments, because there is just way too much negativity in the world, and I'm happy that I'm not dealing with a lot of it right now because I'm not working. If you have friends, family, or if you're a new viewer and you want to see more of these videos, hit that bell. YouTube will notify you when I put in the next video, and I can already hear my wife telling me I took too long. She's not even awake yet. Anyhow, you guys have a good day. Be safe. God bless. See you next time.